Hello and welcome to this week's edition of On the Couch, where we are joined by two very successful men from the Duffry Rovers GA club, Martin Fitzhenry and John Casey, to discuss their best days on the field. But first of all, Martin, it has been quite a sad year for the Duffry Rovers GA club overall.
Yes, a very sad year. We lost our president and our chairman. Our president was Jim Jordan, the famous publican from Ballindagan, and a selector on our Seven-in-a-Row winning senior football team. But that was sort of a natural occurrence, but we lost Martin O'Connor, our chairman, in tragic circumstances in a farm accident, and we'll take this opportunity to offer our condolences to both families.
And I suppose, yeah, a very very sad time for the club. But we're mainly here, I suppose, to discuss some of the happier times that took place in the 80s and 90s, John. And before we do that, where did GA start for you? It was a bit more unusual than the normal boy around the time, I'd imagine.
Well, that's true, really, yeah, because I was born in England and I lived in Davistown and we came back from England in 1970. I lived in Davistown for about 7 or 8 years and then moved up to Came in 1977. And I'd say I wasn't in Came a couple of days when Terry O'Regan, who was a stalwart of the club back then, came in to me and asked me would I sign up, or came in and said to sign up for Duffy Rovers. I had played 1 or 2 games, club games with Davistown, and as soon as he arrived, Terry was there straight away to get me involved. That was 1977 is when I started then, because I wasn't really involved much with the successful underage teams with Father Harry Sinnott was involved with, and it was from 1977 then that I became involved then, from then on. So it's Terry O'Regan got me involved back then.
And Martin, John mentioned Father Harry Sinnott and the successful underage teams. What can you remember of those?
I think Father Harry came from St. Joseph's here in Wexford town, where he had been hugely successful, and he really was the springboard for the success of our underage system then. We had huge success under 12, under 14, under 16, all the way up along. But there was more than Father Harry involved as well, and there had been the groundwork done by lots of people. But there was Terry O'Regan, as John said, there was Dickie Murphy, there was Mick Lawler, Mick O'Leary from Kilteely. The problem with starting to mention people is you leave someone out. I better mention my father used to do a lot of driving as well that time, bringing young lads to matches. I suppose in the PC world we live in now, I think Mick Lawler had 13 people in the car one day. Going to, that's not a joke.
That's not a joke. 13.
I think 4 might have been in the boot of the car. So things have changed greatly in that. But that was a springboard. We had great success underage, and then. Oh, John, you weren't involved in the community games team. No, that we got to the community games final in 1973, having won the under 12 championship in 72 football championship, and I think they lost the final ultimately in Mosney, in Butlins Mosney. But yeah, we had a really good team. We had a really good team, and a lot of really good players who didn't ultimately go on to make the senior team that we had. But yeah, that was the springboard for the success of the club. Father Harry and his involvement, and his enthusiasm was infectious. And I might as well just say now the PC world would frown at this. We played in the Fail na Gael, I think it was in 1976 in Cork, 75 or 76 I think, but I wasn't having one of my better games at half time, and he pulled the jersey off my back, threw it on the ground and said if I wasn't going to play any better that I'd never wear a Duffry jersey again. Now the interesting thing about that was my father was standing over in the corner of the dressing room and didn't think there was anything wrong with that. So things have changed slightly, but anyway, there you go.
And just speaking about your family, you come from you're one of 15?
One of 15, yes.
Siblings?
10 boys and 5 girls, yeah. Huge family. Yeah, and sure, no huge tradition of GAA in the family. except maybe on my mother's side, there would have been maybe a bit. She was from Tombrack, and her brothers might have been more into GA maybe than the Fitzhenrys were in Kilteely. But I suppose the fact that there were so many boys and girls all there together, there was very little else to do except play, and that's what we did. And we all played. I don't know if you want me to go through everyone, but we all played.
Well, I'm not going to try names.
No, well, MJ played a lot of hurling and football. He was the oldest, and Tom was next, and Tom was a really good hurling footballer. And then the rest of us would be well known without me going into everyone now. And of course, the last of us all then was the most famous, obviously, Damien. So, and I do remember Liam Griffin saying, if you could hold your own in the Fitzhenry household, you'd hold your own in Croke Park, and that's what he was able to do. So.
And John, did you find it a difficult thing to, I suppose, get involved once you started, or did you just sort of blend in fairly seamlessly?
It just seemed to blend in seamlessly. I played a bit, as I said, with Davistown. I remember in national school, Jimmy Hoolan happened to be in national school in Corncuddy back then. I remember playing a little bit with him in school, and I just seemed to just enjoy the game. And just then when I did move to, because when we were in Davistown, like, you hear of how successful Duffry Rovers has been in the past at underage, and here was I had an opportunity to join this team, and I took the opportunity, and it just seemed to work out for me. Yeah.
Had you played hurling before you came
I'd played a little bit of hurling in Davistown, but nothing of any. Because I remember one game that sticks out in my mind when I was playing for Davistown. We played against the Duffry in what was Lampert's Field.
Yeah.
And got absolutely annihilated. And I just seemed to be in awe of all these players like that were able to do everything. And I just remember then I said, right, then when my parents said we were moving to Came, back in that time I said, great, I'll have an opportunity now to try and play with these players. And that's how it just seemed to work for me. And for some reason.
And Martin mentioned that there wasn't a massive GA history in the family. Was there in yours?
No. My father was from Galway originally, and my mother was from Davistown. My mother would have played a bit of camogie. I don't think my father played much. I think when he was in England, he played a small bit, but not to any high standard or anything like that. But so there wouldn't have been any great background for the GA. I've one next brother to me had no real interest in it, was more interested in playing soccer. Next brother then Kevin played a little bit. He's Seamus's father, Seamus Casey's father. He played a little bit, and then sister and the other brother then played a little bit, but nothing of any significance,
And what age did you start? What age did you say you started?
Well, I was 16. I just started minor then with Duffy Rovers. That's where I started at that stage.
Straight in hurling and football.
Both in hurling and football, yeah. It took a bit of a while to get to the hurling because I didn't have, I didn't start from when you were 7 or 8 or 9.
It didn't take him long. No,
it just seemed to come natural to me for some reason. It just seemed to do,
And Martin, naturally enough, when a team has had, or a club has had underage success, what often follows then is adult success, and that wasn't long about coming for the Duffry Rovers.
No, but it probably should have came a bit earlier than it did. We lost 2 senior hurling semi-finals in 1983 and in 1985, and really, obviously St Martin's and Buffers Alley will have a differing view than us, but we probably should have won both of them, John.
Should have won, definitely against Buffers Alley. Definitely get that deal.
I won't mention the goal you missed.
Right, okay.
And you won't mention the fact that I didn't start. But anyway, we probably should have made it a little, and then we lost the senior football final in '84. But we were always coming. But I suppose looking back on it now, the teams in '83 and '84 were a good bit different than ultimately what won in '86. The difference that we had in '86 was as well as the cohort from, we'll say, when just my family is easy to deal with because you have John, Shamey and myself around the same age. So we had came from that 72, 73, 74. We then had a very good minor team in 83 and 84. That was Paddy, Noel and Ger. And Fran was coming. So we had them, and then we had Jay Codd. Once again, if you mentioned someone, you're going to leave out someone else.
Yeah.
But we had two basic groups of people. We had the cohort from John, myself, Aidan Jordan, Louis Rafter, those guys. And then you had the young lads, Jay Myrna, Jay Codd, the two O'Learys, Paul Dreelan, Aidan Redmond,
So these quite strong group of
yes, two distinct
small
groups
came along within playing age of each other. Like.
Yes,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and really it was the ideal combination of 19 and 20-year-olds with experienced guys, who led them for a while, and then they were well able to handle themselves. But yeah, we made the breakthrough in '86, and sure, then it kind of snowballed. The hurling, see, success breeds success,
Yes,
and when we won in the football, maybe we took our eye off the hurling a little bit. And we won the football then the next 7 years, which when looking back on it now, it seems incredible. And there is a funny story about that, because we weren't doing well in the hurling, but one of our great club men was John O'Neill, who was the postman, but he was the postman in Rathnure as well. But he was doing the post in Rathnure about the fourth year that we had won the football, and someone said, "God, it's no bother to win that football championship." And John O'Neill said, "Well, it's no bother for the Duffry anyway." So, yeah, look, it just snowballed, and we, I suppose if there's a disappointment, we didn't maybe go on and do a little bit better in the club championship.
Right.
But it was just a different time, wasn't it?
It was a different time, yeah. Because we were beaten in the final in '84, lost the semi-final in '85, and then won it in '86. So very easily now, maybe
we might
we'll
have.
never know.
Yeah, but
If we'd have won in '84,
You mightn't have.
well, it
No.
mightn't have been, because maybe at that stage, because
You lost a lot of players after that, didn't you? Quite a few players after that.
no,
did
we
you?
didn't lose too many players actually. That was one thing. The nucleus, we lost maybe one or two players.
Oh, yeah, but really we were lucky, because our neighbours Bunclody, who were our biggest rivals at the time, and I'm talking about real rivalry, because you would have went to Enniscorthy, but the vast majority of us would have went to FCJ or the vocational school in Bunclody. The rivalry was intense with them, but they lost half their team.
Yeah, and they made an awful lot of they made 4 or 5 finals in the 80s, didn't they? They won 2 of them.
Yeah, that's right. They were beaten by Wexford District, weren't they? Didn't they lose to Wexford District in that final?
77, I think, was it? Or
I'm not sure they could have.
But either way, Bunclody
were
were really good. Bunclody were really good, and probably our greatest rivals. And
I remember thinking back, playing like under 21, like the next step up to senior. If we could get over Bunclody within the district, because it was all district, if we could get over Bunclody, we had a great chance of winning. And that was always our toughest match.
Yeah.
In the district, is against Bunclody. And as you're right, like they lost so many players. Like not saying we would have been able to beat them at senior, but nobody will ever know now. But they did lose an awful lot. Now we were lucky enough in that the nucleus of the team stayed together. We really were in that regard, like, especially back in that, a lot of players, 2 or 3 players. Aidan Redmond left. Aidan Redmond left and Paul Dreelan left. But after that,
that was it.
I think that was it. Like other than that, the nucleus of the team stayed together. And
And can I ask? Oh, sorry.
Go on, Laura.
Just so you were captain for 7 years in a row.
yes.
I'll ask Martin in a minute what the attributes you had. But what do you think what initially maybe?
I think it was. I just remember back, like, well, it's not that my memory wouldn't be that great now, but I was picked that day, and
Don't be modest now.
No, I'm not. No, and I remember the next year somebody else said we won't change, and that's how it came about.
Okay.
And if we didn't change it,
Kind of a superstition.
superstition, whatever you can call it, whatever you look, a good luck
Not
charm,
all
I was in the right
superstition,
place
I'm
at the right
sure.
time and got the opportunity.
Were you the captain in '84 when you were
No.
beaten? You weren't.
No.
I think, I'm not sure who that
Was Shamey the captain?
could have been Jamie, yeah.
I'm
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who was captain in
I'm not sure
'84
who was captain.
or who was captain in '85. Then I was captain, and then we got beaten. Then it was, I think Louis was captain then after that.
Louis was captain when we won in 83 or in
94.
90,
The last.
Yeah.
yeah, 94.
'94, yeah.
But anyway, John is being modest.
Okay.
Look at-
In real story.
Not only has he, you see,
real
not
story.
only has he the unique, whatever the record of being captain, but he played in the same position in all those finals. In the same position, never lost his position in that length of time. Like, that's a 10-year period of being picked in the exact same position for that many games. So it wasn't just the finals he was picked in that position. Like, he was rock solid.
And for those who don't know, which position was it?
Well, it was number 5.
Number
Whether
5.
it was
Yeah.
left half back, is
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Well, right,
Right,
yeah.
Yeah,
Right
right
half
half back,
yeah.
right half back. And of course, the other thing he doesn't say is we scored 1 point in that infamous match where
That's
we were
it.
10 points down. We scored 1 point in the first half. He scored it at a time where wing backs weren't,
Yeah.
Going forward.
doing what
Yeah.
wing backs are doing now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you see what he was,
see-
and he supreme athlete. Supreme athlete, really up and down the field, really fit. Brought lots of energy. Didn't do much. I don't believe you ever shouted at anyone, but just led by example. Led by example. But great captain, and once we had won it the first year, there was never going to be a change.
Well, tell us about the first year then, 1986, the first title that the Duffry Rovers win, and you're the captain. What did it feel like, or what even before the final? What was the lead? What was the previous games in the championship like even?
Well, you see, the way I look at it, in '85 we were unlucky. We were beaten, as I said, by Cushawn, and it was a real foggy evening down in Wexford Park, and they got a last minute goal. We were winning, and they got a last minute goal. And I said we weren't too far away, and we said if we just keep, kind of believing in ourselves, and because we had the ability, we had some top class players, and we were knocking on the door. I said, and it never really crossed my mind to say, look, okay, I'm captain, we're going to win this year. It just went from game to game to game, because I remember back in, I think it was in '86, a match against Rosslare in Patrick's Park that we very nearly got beaten. And like I just said earlier on, that James O'Connor played that evening. Now, James didn't play too many football games, but he was absolutely out of his world that day. And we thought, right, if you could get James with that attitude for the rest of the year, we'd have a very good chance. But then I don't think James mightn't have played any more after that. But that one evening, he just seemed to, everything he did, and just got us over the line, because we just needed to go over the line. And it just kind of snowballed from then. The actual final itself, like it's indescribable how, after, for the club to win its first senior football title, through the elation and the enjoyment, it's something that you'll never forget. You see, back then it's a different world than it is now. Like social media now takes over. Like if it was the club's first time in the county final now, there's a lot more hype about it. There would have been a lot of hype within the parish or whatever, but outside it's people are probably saying, yeah, they could win or they could run and like to get caught again, because we were playing Gusron, who were we would have no tradition of winning county finals. Like Gusron had won finals before, and like when you think back to the team that they had, like with Collins and Big Caulfield and Tyke Ford, all them players, like they had the kind of the knowledge or the know-how that we thought that we wouldn't have had at that stage. Because as the years went by, we had that experience, and there was probably games that we shouldn't have won, but it was just our experience and our know-how got us over the line to win them games. It's great memories.
Was it hard to stay driven? For the, was it every year we're going to win another one, like that?
No, you see,
seems
you
nearly
can't.
unsustainable
No,
for
you can't.
long.
Once you get into the winning habit, it's you don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
You know, like when I think back, like when we lost in '93 to Kyle, like it was
Devastating.
terrible. You know, that was all. You know, it was over then as such at that stage.
And that would have been a massive shock because Kyle were only up from intermediate
Correct,
the previous
yeah.
They had only come up that year as well, yeah. But look at, you know, like it's in any sport. Like all good teams come to an end, or all things come to an end at some stage. But there was wouldn't have set out at the start of the year that we're going to win this county final this year. Like it just evolved. But it goes back to like the coach we had, Bob Breakwell. Like he probably was more driven now, you know, in his mindset that yes, we have to win it again, and we have to win it again, because he kept us going and going and going. And same with the selectors, Philip, Tom, Jim Jordan as well. Would have been in their own mindset, would have been wanting us, yes, we have to win. But just personally, it was just to go to the next game, win the next game, win the next game, win the next game, and see where it brings you down at the end. And then unfortunately it did come to an end.
Yeah.
You know, because when you look back on it, we could have actually won
9 in a row, maybe.
in '84.
Or even 11 in a row, maybe, if things had gone.
Well, like,
slightly.
like if the challenge had been like if you could look back and we won '84 and won '85, then having to win the next, there would have been a huge emphasis then to win possibly 10 in a row. But look, we're not being greedy. Like it was great to win 7. It was great to win 7
And then
in a
to
row.
lose one and come back and win again the following year.
I think that is
incredible.
actually.
that
I think that was our biggest achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
That's
we
huge.
proved that we could take a hit and come back the next year. But John just mentioned there, about how driven. But Bob Breakwell was a guy who came, and I think it was actually Wales. I just always think it was England, but I was listening to Philip Howland last night. He said it was Wales. Whether it was Wales or England, he had a rugby background, but he was ahead of his time. We trained like nobody ever trained before in Wexford, without question. And lots of games we won in the last 10 minutes. And I remember because Philip Howland reminded me last night when I was listening to an interview he had done. And he didn't know who had said it, but I think it was me. We came back from training with the Wexford team and joined I'd been training with the Wexford hurling team, or maybe it was Shamey with the football team, whatever. But we'd go to train with Bob Breakwell then up in Coleraine, and we'd physically get sick. Like you think at the time the inter-county players would be, and they are now, far fitter, but the training that Bob Breakwell was doing was far harder than we were doing with the county team. And
what was he bringing to the table that other teams wouldn't have had? Was it an expertise, or was it just...
Well, it wasn't an expertise in Gaelic games, but it was an expertise in, I'd say, psychology. He always just was driven to be,
push it.
What's the point in playing unless you play to win? Now, that mightn't be the way it should be, but that's the way we were then, and he wouldn't accept anything less. He was an incredible guy. He lived in the Still, which is about 7 miles from Coleraine. He would run out to the Still with his dog, run out from the Still, out to Coleraine, do all the training with us.
Actually take part in it?
Do every single thing we did, take part in it, and run home.
Oh, wow.
And I just used to think back, like, especially on the physical exercise, he'd watch and say Martin wasn't doing it properly. All of a sudden, then he comes over beside you.
Yeah, that's right.
And whatever way he had a way about him, he made you do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Without
he was a motivator, I suppose.
Yeah.
It
was just he was ahead of his time, like, because he's right. Like, that's what did win games for us, was the level of fitness that we had. And like when you look back on it, there's nobody really. Okay, sometimes you didn't want to train or whatever. But majority of the time, everybody trained all the time.
Well, John was an exception.
Well, that's what I mean. There's always an exception to the rule. There's always an exception to the rule. What?
Throw him under the bus.
Well,
there.
John Fitzhenry won't mind you throwing him under the bus
because he would tell you that himself as well. Like, but like he had his own special talent.
Fitness would have been extra. It's obviously important for any team, but it would have been some of the matches would have been played in boggy sort of conditions and difficult conditions, and when legs are heavy, it's
Yeah.
that extra bit that can sometimes.
Yeah. Although a couple of games, well, there was a few games we definitely were really lucky to. Buffers Alley, strangely, being a hurling club, they should have beaten us one evening in Belfield. And that was a good evening. That was a fine summer's evening.
Yeah, it wasn't bad conditions or anything like that. Yeah.
Tamun in Wexford Park one evening when Johnny McDermott gave one of the greatest exhibitions of football that I've seen in Wexford Park for Tamun. He almost beat us on his own. And obviously Glenbarntown should have definitely beaten us in one of those finals. But by the time the Glenbarntown game came along, that was about 4 finals in.
That was the fourth final, I think. Yeah,
Like we now were we were thinking we couldn't be beaten. And if you remember at half time in the dressing room, there was a calmness.
Yeah, there was a.
Even though we were 10 points down, there was a calmness that, and I think it was Louis said, we don't need a goal here, lads, to win this. And you'd think you'd have to get a goal to bring back a 10-point lead in football, but we didn't.
We didn't, no.
It was, so that was probably a defining moment too, that teams then felt just these guys can't be beaten.
Can't be, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because I'd say some teams psychologically thought themselves that it couldn't beat us as well. You know, like when you have a team that seems to be never ending. Or even if you're 10 points ahead of them or whatever, in other games other teams were probably ahead of us, and we were able to come back towards the end of the games. We were able to finish nearly as strong at the end as we were at the start. You know, for some reason, and teams just got into had themselves beaten before they even actually went out to play us. But,
we probably had a decent panel too. Most teams probably had 10 or 12, and the last 3 guys wouldn't probably be up to the mark. We probably had 2 or 3 subs every day that felt a bit put out. You know, we probably had slightly upper hand on most teams in that department.
Excellent. And Duffry, you also had a brilliant fantastic hurling team, but just was the emphasis more, like say with with regards to training, like what way would you have trained? Was it week on, week off, hurling, football?
No, I don't.
No, there was no
more emphasis on football and the hurling just came.
There wasn't.
No.
There wasn't. It wasn't said this week we're all football and next week or this month is all football and next week then is all. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that at all. It's just, for want of a better word, the football seemed to come a little bit easier, and that was it. And maybe it was. I don't know whether Bob wouldn't have had any idea. Remember a few times that he.
Well, he tried to coach hurling.
Tried to coach hurling, and so he hadn't. Yeah. He was from the rugby, because he even struggled at times with the football as well.
Well, look, we were a little bit short in hurling. You know,
probably, yeah.
We were a little bit short.
And would there have ever been much friction between guys that were more hurling orientated as compared with football orientated guys, or was it just the accepted thing?
I don't remember it being a huge issue at the time. It's probably spoken a bit about now that, maybe. And I'd say if I have a slight regret is that, maybe we could have snuck in one hurling,
Yeah.
But just to give an example of someone like, you were probably equally proficient at hurling and football, similar to us, but Louis Rafter would have been so much better footballer. Now he was a terribly hard guy to mark in hurling. Liam Dunn actually had huge problems marking him because of his size, but like Louis Rafter was a powerhouse of a footballer, and he wouldn't mind me saying he wasn't a powerhouse of a hurler. And there was a few in that. There was a few
in that category.
Yeah. We were the facts speak for themselves. We didn't win a hurling. We were close on 2 occasions to get into the final. Who knows? We may or may not have, won the finals. And look at, that's the reality now. We didn't. I wouldn't have said it was friction at the time.
No, I wouldn't think so. No.
And we would have given it our best. Yeah. But then, and I'm not even sure what the format was every year, but probably once you lost the hurling game, now just in the back of your mind you were thinking, "Oh, gee, look, we'll just go and win the football,"
Yeah.
you know. But look, that's the way it was. Even though we had been hugely successful in hurling in minor and under 21,
yeah. We don't know how long.
you know, with Marshalltown,
Yeah.
you know. But look, that's just the way it went. It was, yeah.
And then you had a particularly special year when you, I believe, became it still hasn't been lifted, an All-Ireland Junior Football Cup, was it?
Yeah, in 92, yeah. I was
92.
made captain of that junior football team that won the All-Ireland in 1992, yeah.
First man since 19, was it?
18 to
18.
lift an All-Ireland Wexford
And
Cup.
still hasn't been beaten.
So
since,
hopefully someday soon that'll be beaten again.
hopefully.
Their records there to be
It's pretty
beaten at some
special.
stage. Yeah, it was a special. And it was and because even in that year, like we lost. I remember the first day. I think it was in Belfield where they play Wicklow and they were struggling to get a team together, and I think that could have. I'm not 100% sure, but that could have been a draw, and then we went up to play Wicklow to replay. Maybe all as long. I'm not 100% sure. But in the Leinster Championship that time, we could play players that could play on the county team. But once they played on the county team, they were ineligible. I remember Shamey Fitzhenry, Eamon Cleary, Noel Fitzhenry, and there was one other one that I can't think of now at the moment. There was 4 players that we lost that played in the Leinster final in the junior against Meath, and then they went and played senior then with the county team, and we lost, and they weren't available after that. Then and other players then came in then against I think it was Mayo in the semi-final and then Cork in the final. But yeah, that was some great memories. We actually, Nicky Darcy was involved in that, and he's actually only there like 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. They were just meeting up again. It was 30 years, and they were meeting up there a couple of weeks ago in down in Curracloe, and then going to some place in Wexford, just to meet up again after all that period of time. Yeah, and Nicky said it was great to see them players again. Yeah. Unfortunately, Liam Fardy was involved with us that time, and unfortunately Liam's not in great health now at the moment. But yeah, again, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to be made captain.
But that was a decent team though for a junior team.
It was a very, very good team.
Probably a lot of them could have played senior.
A lot of playing, yeah. Well, Patch Courtney had played senior, Brendan Kavanagh, and Nicky Darcy. So a lot of them went on to play senior, and then Mick Caulfield, Tom O'Gorman, John Cooper played in goal for a long time after that with the senior team. So that was another.
Well, so that was obviously a standout moment in the purple and gold. Can you remember the first time you would have or worn a Wexford jersey or been picked for Wexford in any? I'll ask Martin the same thing now in a moment, so he can be thinking.
Well, I played a couple of league games in the Winter League games, but I remember I played one championship match, one and only championship match against Kildare I'm not sure exactly, but I remember playing against, and I thought when I was playing that I had a lot of pace myself. I was reasonably quick, but I remember the man I played with, I'm 99% sure that his name was Tom Harris, and I thought I could run, but I was nowhere near, couldn't keep up with this individual. And that's what sticks in my mind, even though the step up to go up to inter-county level from club level was, in my opinion, was huge. Like that, everything was done so much quicker and so much faster. So I didn't have a great memory now in
Your senior game.
In the senior game after that. I didn't play any more senior matches after that. But that's the memory that I have from that few Winter League games. All right. But again, the conditions there would be fairly difficult now because I think back then Wexford would have been in Division 3 or Division 4, and there wasn't a huge emphasis on it at that stage. But that's what it's just the pace and how it stepped up so quick.
Yeah.
That's what sticks out in my mind for that anyway. Yeah.
And your days in the purple and gold, Martin, what are the highlights? There are a few.
There are, I suppose. I probably played, even though I can't rightly remember. I know the first time that I went for a trial for the Wexford under 14 team, I had to be sent home because Father Harry had played me illegally under 12 2 years previous because I was so small. And when I went in and they checked my day of birth, I obviously couldn't play. I'm born the 29th of December, so
All
it was
right,
only
you're only 2
2
days
days,
illegal,
2 days.
3 days illegal.
either way. But obviously then I played minor. I played minor football for 3 years in a row for Wexford, actually. And then I played minor hurling just in 1980. They had actually played the first round, and Martin Codd, the late Martin Codd, was selector, and he called over to the house to see would I go and play. And of course, I did. And to be fair, he used to come and collect me and bring me to training and to matches, whatever. So we got to the All Ireland final, and that was probably one of the great experiences of going out in Croke Park on All Ireland final day. And then I played senior football for Wexford in 1983, which was also a great day. We played Offaly. Offaly had beaten Kerry in the 82 final, and we played Offaly in probably the quarter final, or might have even been the semi final. It was probably the quarter final in Croke Park. I remember Shamey was one wing forward and McCarthy was centre forward. And I'll never forget, well, there's two things I won't forget from that day. McCarthy called myself and Shamey together just before the game. He says, lads, you concentrate on the ball and I'll deal with everything else. And to be fair, he did. We probably didn't. But in any event, the other thing was, Noel Swords, I think, and Podge Skinner Welsh were midfield for, I'm fairly sure I'm right, and George O'Connor was wing back. And when the referee threw in the ball, George broke Skinner's ribs. He had ran from wing back to catch the throw. But George was George O'Connor was a far better, and I know he went out last night, he was a far better footballer than he was hurler. He was a magnificent footballer. But anyway, they were the two things I remember from the football. And then 84 came along, and yeah, I had that dream debut that everyone dreams about, but that can be a bit of a curse as well. But yeah, it was a great day.
Well, tell people about that then. It was against
sure,
Kilkenny.
everyone is sick of listening to it, and they're out there saying, "Is he still talking about it?" Anyway, well, of course, it was the reason I was involved at all was it was the infamous at league affair where they went up to play in the league against Roscommon and lost to Roscommon in hurling, and there was a bit of a broom brought in. There was a few lads swept, and I was brought in and went up to Tipperary and played in a practice match. Actually, Pat Fox, who ultimately went on and had a great career as a forward with Tipperary, but he was a cornerback that day. Played in the Leinster semi-final against Kilkenny, and we might as well put it on record. Tony Dorn made me, and I scored 2-3. But anyway, we ultimately lost the final, having not scored for 26 minutes, which was probably the biggest regret I have in my hurling career.
But you still scored 2-3.
Yeah, but that doesn't really matter. We should have beaten Offaly. Now Offaly ultimately lost the final, the centenary final in Thurles to Cork, but it would have been nice to get there.
The debut all the same.
Yeah, certainly a good debut to remember. The family is quite remarkable, really. We mentioned that there were 15 of you, but I think 7 of the boys played senior at some level for Wexford in either hurling or football, and your sister Tina. Yeah,
Tina was a brilliant camogie player. Can't tell you exactly the year now, but she played in All Ireland finals. They ultimately lost them, but she was a brilliant camogie player. Did 7 of us play inter or senior? Yeah. Okay.
I think Fran would have played in league matches and the other 6 played in.
Right, okay.
I shouldn't be telling you.
See, I'll have to say,
I know.
It's something that I just wouldn't be.
But it's a fairly remarkable statistic.
It is.
It'd probably be easier for you to describe the Fitzhenry brothers as importance to their Duffry, maybe.
Sure. How would you describe it now? But sometimes when you have kind of situations where, see, what way will I word this now? I need to
carefully, John.
Carefully. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that part of it. Yeah. It's not as if if you had a falling out with one of them, that was it. Was the falling out, but it wasn't. They weren't really from what I don't mean this. They weren't really clannish that they, they all probably if let's say Martin was out of order, that the other brothers would support what he was doing. Like they were an exceptional family. Like they all had the ability. Like every single one of them, like you could depend on every single one of them in the situation without doubt. But to me, and you look back, probably every day of the week or when you'd be training at training sessions, like when you were up against them, like you were always even though you were training with them, you were training against the best. So like when you went out to a match situation,
one of your tougher challenges was in the training field.
To me, the toughest challenge, like if you ask like who was the most difficult player you ever played against, to me it was Shamey, without a doubt, Shamey Fitzhenry in training. No matter what you would try to do, he would always seem to be nearly a half a step ahead of you. Kind of knew what you were going to do, and that's how you just develop. And it's the same with all of them. Like they all had their own attributes. John, you mentioned earlier, didn't do a whole lot of training, but positionally he was the most underrated player, in my opinion, to be in the right place at the right time to do the simple thing. No limelight, no nothing like that, and just get on with it. They were an exceptional family. And it's most unusual that I think for 1 year there was 7 years on the team. Was it 1 year?
No, I think it was 6.
Six, was it?
It was slightly contentious that there wasn't 7.
And that was only a blip, but it was they were an exceptional family, and for that period of time they gave so much and still indirectly give so much back to the club. Like it was just absolutely exceptional.
It must have been a great thrill, Martin, for Damien to win an All-Ireland medal, for the family to be following the journey.
96 was incredible. It just and he was involved so often in the year, and it was always an excitement,
coming up to take a penalty or make a save.
Or the saves more than the penalties even. Kind of penalties shouldn't have been, but we'd be expecting them to score the penalties. But some of the saves and the enjoyment you'd get from the excitement was just it was incredible. It was a year that we'll never forget. Really was.
Your parents must have been incredibly
absolutely.
Absolutely. It's the same like when you'd be in the field, like you'd be just a buzz about the place.
Yeah.
There must have been some scramble for tickets though in the household.
It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have everyone and everyone's partner and
it really was a nightmare, the ticket situation, and I know we were getting them from everywhere, and the biggest fear then was, the places you got them from. If they got to an All-Ireland in the next couple of years, then you were going to have to try and get them back for them. But the excitement, just the day of the Leinster final and the day of the All-Ireland final were just days that you just felt so proud to be related. I mean, it was not quite as good as if you were playing yourself, but definitely second best. No, they were great days. But I suppose, and you mentioned the family there, some kind words from John, but we had some other great players, and it is really. If I start naming them now, you're going to leave out someone but I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to mention two. We had two guys. Most of the Fitzhenrys, I think I can say this, were pretty skillful and pretty fast, and in hurling football. But we had a couple of lads. But Aidan Jordan was centre forward, uncompromising. Ger O'Connor was corner back. And uncompromising doesn't do him justice, but we had those 2 or 3 guys who didn't mind it if it got a little bit tough, and there was lots of others, and I'm not going to mention them because it'd be unfair.
Was it fair to say it was a very family orientated club in general at that time?
Yes.
A lot of brothers, siblings that played at that time.
And we'll say the hurling team that nearly made the breakthrough was a lot of the O'Connors of Duffry Hall. you know, they had a big family as well. I can't. There was Eddie and Ollie and Donald and Barty and Noel and James.
Yeah.
And they probably, not sure if they all played. They probably didn't all play. Ollie and Eddie were probably gone, but there was 4 of them playing most days. You know, there was a lot of families involved, and I think just even without wanting to go back, and I am of course, but not only you kind of know what your brothers are thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a bond that
you're looking up ahead.
claim.
Like I was sort of midfield, and you're looking up at 2 or 3 of them up in the forwards, and you kind of know where they're going to go, and without even having to think about you know what happens next. Yeah, I think it'd be unfair to say that, you know, it was just one family or 2 families. We had a lot of really good, solid players at the time, and that you know, that was the big.
And one thing that happens to every sporting career is that it comes to an end. And when it came to Gaelic football and hurling, John, how did that happen for you? Was it an easy thing to do, or was it a natural end? Or
it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. No, I probably played a little bit longer than probably what I should have played when I look back on it. But I just enjoyed the game so much, and I was reasonably fit in myself, and I thought I was reasonably fit. But unfortunately, as the years go by, even though your mind might be still quite active, the body wasn't. Probably played 1 or 2 years after that I probably shouldn't have played, but I have no regrets. You know, I have no regrets. I then got involved with managing the team then for a while, and stepped away, and then went back at it again and stepped away again. Like from something that as kind of your life evolved around for that period of time, from the early 70s until the mid 90s as such, and then all of a sudden it's gone from you. Like, it does take a little bit of time, and you try to drag it out. Probably, I'm sure I can keep going another year, but I enjoyed it all right.
how was it for you?
Yeah, I suppose I probably didn't play as long as maybe I would have liked to. Bit injury prone, went abroad for a couple of years as well to Saudi Arabia, so that ultimately didn't really come back after that with the same sort of enthusiasm, even though I was involved to some degree in 93 or 94, but yeah, it just petered out more than there was no big dramatic
Announcements, right?
no, surely no announcements.
Because you get a phone call from the selector, you play a junior B match somewhere, or
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
no. Once I stopped, and yeah, I did a bit of management with other clubs, and I did it with our own club then as well, and kind of stepped away now in the last few years because my own son is playing. So I think you're nearly better off away when your own kids are involved. So I have, you know, it's a conscious decision to let them at it and see how they go. But I'd be wishing them the best in the future, obviously.
And are there lots of Fitzhenry still involved, the younger generations, and
No, there's not. There's
or even playing GA and other clubs or anything? Or
yeah, Ger has a young fella playing in Oilgate, and Noel has 2 playing with the Duffry, and my young fella plays with the Duffry, and I think that could be about it.
no Camogie players?
No Camogie players. Oh, Jeannie, shame me, Ali. Clodagh, yeah. Sorry, Clodagh.
They're really putting you on the spot.
It's I probably have to leave now. Someone else.
She'll have to get an extra special Christmas present.
But in any event, but not you know, not a huge amount of not a huge amount of the offspring involved for varying reasons, but that's just the way it is.
And yourself, John?
I just have one son involved with the club at the moment. The eldest son doesn't play at all, and then daughter plays a bit alright. But doesn't play camogie now. He's just playing football with the Duffry. Are joined with Marshallstown with Bolly Duff Tira, and she plays with that. Yeah, I got involved. I was kind of opposite to Martin to a certain extent. I got involved when my own son was involved, and maybe Martin is right. Sometimes you wonder, all right, because it probably puts a little bit more. I think anyway, myself personally, probably puts a little bit more pressure on them because they seem to be getting preferential treatment or anything like that. Like they just have to be. No, and to be fair to Craig, he wouldn't be looking for preferential treatment.
And also,
or he doesn't need preferential treatment either.
He has the ability, all right,
it's a tough guy.
but it's
or as a manager, you could feel like you need to maybe be harder on him than others.
possibly all
to
right,
make
yeah.
it fair,
Probably, and
you
I'd
know,
say
and-
probably happened more when we were at home together, rather than
On the
because
field,
I wouldn't be one for
Public
chastising
display,
players
yeah.
now in front of I could probably.
I think
try
that
to-
happens underage more than at adult level.
Yeah.
You know, you're expecting probably more from your own, and you're probably a bit hard on them, and to some degree, particularly when they're under 12, you probably take them off days that you shouldn't, just so that you can, give everyone a run or whatever. So it's easier to take off your own. You're not falling out with anyone. So
And then there's, I suppose, on the other hand, there are some who get involved with the best intentions, but have a bit of a tunnel vision in terms of
Yes,
their
that's-
child being a
that's
little bit
true
better
as
than
well,
others.
yeah.
But
absolutely.
That's true as well, yeah.
yeah, there's certainly two different sides to that coin.
The other thing about I think the game is so different now compared to when we were I was just actually watching the club finals there on the weekend, and as regards positions, there's no such thing as positions. And I remember when we were playing, if you were playing and you turned your back to where you were going and kicked the ball back, say, to the goalkeeper, you'd absolutely be lambasted. Just to put it mildly.
Yeah.
It's just the thing has changed so much. The game,
There was a far greater emphasis. I would have seen clips of highlights of some of the finals that you'd have played in. Far greater emphasis on just kicking the ball as hard as you could.
Yeah. It was about and that. I think it's gone away. Football has gone away from that. The tradition of playing football as such. It's more like a game of. It's a possession game now at this stage that you don't. I was just watching. As I said, I was watching there and the amount of times it just, the player was in a position to take a shot but wouldn't take a shot. Whether they don't believe in themselves or they're just afraid that if they all of a sudden they've lost possession that they're just lambasted, as you said. It's completely.
It's
Like
difficult.
different games, nearly like hockey and rugby, the play goes back and around across the field rather than straight, maybe as you would have done. Then it would have been just straight for the goal. Back then.
I think it's difficult to watch Gaelic football now.
It is.
I really
It's
do.
a challenge now to watch it now.
I do think they're going to have to make some amendments to rules, and I don't like changing rules just for the sake of it. But just this lateral play going across the field and just
Because
one
they
after
will
another.
they will just lose. There's no buzz about it at the moment. There's so many games at the moment. At the moment there just seems to be, especially in some of the club games and what's happening, unfortunately, there wasn't that too many club games this year, but when I was involved with the team playing against other teams, they just seem to be copying what other inter-county teams are doing, just hold on to possession and this position about putting 2 players behind the ball or 3 players behind the ball and just don't lose possession. The minute you get the ball, there's this turnover and you just, as quick as you can, get to the other end of the field. But yet, when they get to the other end of the field, then they still won't take the shot. You often hear this phrase, get it to your kicker, but to play against something like that, it's only a matter of standing there. Now, if you were the kicker, just stand beside you, and eventually somebody else will have to take a chance. But it's just a different game now. It's just people often say, how would you do now against teams?
It's
But
just
there was no in my view, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
It's like a totally different game.
It's totally, because back then we would have played basically to your position. You had your full back line and you had your corner. You wouldn't be playing sweepers or 2 men behind the ball or bringing your. Okay, sometimes you might try to create space, but ultimately you get back to your position. Where at the moment it just seems to be. You just have to be an athlete to be able to run for 60 minutes.
And hold on to the ball as
And
best
hold
you
on to
can.
the ball. And don't kick the ball away and don't give it away.
Well,
That's That's
You managed to
crazy.
hold on to it for
Yeah.
7 years, so you
Just
didn't do
gonna
too
say.
We
bad.
were doing something right back then, yeah.
And we've managed to hold on to the lads for probably long enough for this evening, I'd say. I think there
Thank you very
are
much.
plenty of people across the county and maybe even further afield that will find your memories of the past very, very interesting. And I'm sure those who saw you in action, lads, on the field would have great admiration for the Duffry team of the late 80s and early 90s. And thanks very much for joining us on the couch tonight.
Thank you
you.
very much, Peter. All right,
Thanks,
thank
mate.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
On the Couch is sponsored by Murphy's Furniture, who've been supporters of Wexford GAA for many years. Murphy's have 2 shops in Wexford, one in Gorey and one in Wexford Town. Along with a huge range of furniture, sofas, beds and mattresses, Murphy's are now launching their carpet and flooring ranges across their 5 shops this December. They also have stores in Carlow, Naas and Dublin. Anthony and Nicky Murphy are proud supporters of Wexford GAA and are delighted to now offer flooring to the people of Wexford